lesson 2 of chapter 2, equivalent forms of rational numbers. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to simplify a fraction with greatest common factor. I'm going to bring back up the notes that I was showing you right here. So we looked at how to find the greatest common factor, and we used the example of 24 and 36. And I circled all of the ones that they had in common, the prime factors they had in common. And then we multiplied 2 times 2 times 3 and got 12 as the greatest common factor. The other thing you can do with this is it already simplified my fraction for me. So 24, let's say that I was doing 24 over 36 and I wanted it simplified. Well, if I did this same process, I would look at the ones that they don't have in common, that they have not been circled, and that is going to be my simplified fraction, 2/3. And that's because if I took my greatest common factor and divided it by 24, so 24 divided by 12 would be 2, and 36 divided by 12 would be 3. So that's how I got that there. So kind of just a little nifty trick. If you divide by the greatest common factor, or if you find the prime factorization of the two numbers, and then you cross off all the ones they have in common, and you just look at top at what is left. And if there was a 2 and say a 7 left here, I would have to multiply 2 times 7 to figure out what my numerator was. All right, first we have a key vocabulary term. So our vocab term is rational. A rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction with the top an integer. Do you remember what integers are? Negative numbers, positive numbers, and 0. And the bottom is not a 0. So all of these are examples of rational numbers. 8, -3, 1/4, 25, 375 over 2, 0.33 repeating, any repeating or terminating decimals, all fractions that don't have a 0 as a denominator, all whole numbers, positive and negative numbers. It really is most of the numbers that we deal with are rational numbers. Okay? Decimals, percents, and fractions. So to make a fraction a decimal, you divide. If I've got a fraction and I want to go to a decimal, I'm going to divide. All right, so let's look at our example problem. We have 36 divided by 125, and we've already learned that that bar there is just like division. So this is our dividend, and it's going to fall off the tree inside the house. So here, rewritten, we have 125, and then inside the house we have 36. So when I go to divide, I might need to annex some zeros, but I'm going to bring my decimal right up. 125 goes into 3 0 times, 6 0 times, 362 times, and then we have 8 and 8. So here we go. We divided it out using long division, and our answer is 0.288. There are two types of decimals that you need to know. One type of decimal, the decimal stops. Okay, it goes and then eventually it goes in even, and we have it where it stops. And we call that, when it stops, terminating. So a terminating decimal is where it stops. An example of a terminating decimal would be 1.82 or 1.333 or 7.8652. All of those, they stopped eventually, and so they are considered terminating decimals. Another type of decimal sometimes doesn't stop. It is called a repeating decimal. And a repeating decimal goes on forever and ever with the same repetition. Okay, so an example of that would be like 1/3, which is 0.3 repeating. It goes 0.333333333 forever. And we can show that with a line over it. Or 0.678 repeating. Sometimes you might even have a decimal that is like 1, 2, and then it gets to a 4 that's repeating. That is still considered a repeating decimal, even though the whole thing isn't repeating. Repeating and terminating decimals are both rational numbers. To make a decimal a fraction, so to go the other way, there's two different ways we can do it. One way, the first way, is to write the decimal as a fraction by putting it over a number 1. Then you multiply both parts, the numerator and the denominator, by a power of 10 to get rid of the decimal. And then you simplify with the greatest common factor. So for example, the fraction 1.345. If I wanted to make this into a fraction, what I could do is I could put the whole thing over a 1. And then I'm going to multiply the top, the numerator, times 1, 2, 3, times 1, 2, 3 decimal places, which is 1,000. And I'm going to multiply the denominator by 1,000, which is the same thing as 1, 2, 3, which means I'll go from here 1, 2, 3 places. And so then I have 1,345 over 1,000. And from there, I would need to simplify using the greatest common factor, which is 5. So 1,345 divided by 5 is 269, and 1,000 divided by 5 is 200, and there we go. That is my final answer. All right, there's a second way to do this. For my second way, I'm going to write the whole number before the decimal place as the whole number for the mixed number, and then I'm going to write the decimal part as a numerator and write the denominator as what place value it went to and simplify. What does that look like? Well, let's use the same problem. So we have 1.345. Okay, so I'm going to take my whole number, 1, and I'm going to say that's going to become the whole number for my mixed. Then I'm going to take my 345 as my numerator. And then I'm going to look at this last decimal place and say this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And so I'm going to place that under 1,000. And then I'm going to simplify my fraction. 5 goes into 345 69 times, and then 1,000 200 times. And so I get 1 and 69 over 200, which this, as a mixed number, 200, would go in 1 and 69 over 200. So either way, you get the right answer. You can do whichever one you are more comfortable with. All right, that's it for lesson 2-2. Go ahead and get to work.